bit on how to use them, but let's go on to the next part, and that is, how do we play the field of NPCs? Every storyteller, every game master finds himself at one time or another having to take on multiple personalities in a matter of moments, a difference of perhaps voices, attitudes, information basis, etc. But this collection can take up a huge amount of time if you sit and create every NPC to the same level. So, in order to play the field of non player characters, I have found it easier to redefine what the non player character is in terms of the story. So, they break down to non essential, then second are storyline, and the third are recurring non-player characters. And I usually drop the N off of it because the recurring and the storyline personas that you present are necessary to the story as much as even the players are. In that, if they are improperly introduced, insufficiently represented and made realistic, and if they are downplayed or ignored, this leads to longer term problems. And this, of course, is associated with the way the players are perceived by the storyteller and the game players themselves. So, we talked, I believe last week or maybe a week before, yesterday or the day before, we talked about the idea of the injunction that a player in a role-play game, when I'm administering the game, are actually taking on persona within a world that exists even when the players are not in that role themselves. The enjoined, therefore, have a level of existence that is higher than the others. And when you are introducing a new non-player character to the group, that NPC yet has not been formed. It's not fleshed out. It's not defined. And we don't have to go to all the development of all the details because some NPCs are overlooked. They are treated almost as objects only because the player character is busy driving forward on what the agenda is that they have. So the lowest tier of this are those objective NPCs, and that's the only ones that I actually use the term non-player character to describe. The NPCs are un momento, por favor. Okay, so anyway, the don't know what that's about. We'll talk about that later. So this lowest tier of NPC are the castaways. They're the mention and forget, find and forget. The players come into town and they're going to stop by the stables and drop off their horses. Okay, there's a stable master there. There's a stable boy who they can commission for a couple of coppers to get their horses taken care of or whatever. And the element of their existence is simply to fulfill a role, fulfill a need, and then they're gone. Granted, you could, if it was your intent as a storyteller, to flesh out that stable boy, you're going to be putting more effort into that stable boy, perhaps than the players will even deign to respond to. There are reasons to have developed them to a larger level, if and only if they are going to be the beginning of another hook, or they might be a piece of a story for later. But if they do not fulfill those roles, They're just like the waitress at the restaurant. Yes, you sit down and you eat and you appreciate their service and you laugh at their jokes and all of that. They're engaging for their purpose. But once the engagement is over, nobody remembers them. Now, I use a 3-word descriptive for most of my NPCs because I'm hedging my bets that the players may actually want to engage with them, and that's more for my benefit than for theirs as players. Because if I and for clarification, when I say three-word process, I almost always give them an adjective, an adverb, and a verb that describes the person. So they are nervously confused and enigmatic. 3 words. The more dissonant the 3 are, the more likely they will be remembered by the players. But without the specifics, hang on, again. Okay, so I've got a point. I'm going to take care of it in a moment. It's nothing, and then sorry for the distraction. I'm going to be talking about distractions here in a minute, and that's clearly one of them. And I broke one of my own cardinal rules, so I'll come back to that with the next section. But the non-player character who is a non-essential, any NPC, literally any or any non-essential, get it? Any NPC just simply washes off the board. You literally write his name with a dry eraser because he's going to be changed out after they leave this place, and it won't be important anyway. But I generally will put down the 3-word description and their name in my notes so that I know how to portray them if I want to draw attention to them. And if not, I'd write it as mundanely as possible, and we move on. That level of NPC, the less effort you put into it, the better off you are. The next type are the story NPCs or SPCs. I know I don't, like I said, I put the N in there because now I'm establishing something about that character. It's critically going to be important to the story, and so the players, you will want them to remember that person's name so they can recount and recollect and regain information from them if they forget or they lose information or forgot to write something down. They can still check in with that story PC within the game. So you're going to develop these somewhat. You're going to give a name, attributes if necessary, at least give the foundational value for the SPC. That foundation value gives a general idea of what their numbers are going to be for their attributes. It's a quick and dirty way to actually create a usable, functional PC for that encounter and for continuous encounters. And those usually I create a data block or a 3x5 card with the basic information on. And in particular, on the obverse, on the back of that, I'll put down the actual information that they are going to have access to, including what possible additional stuff they might be able to create if somebody is investigating and rolls a wild success. Maybe you have to give them additional information. This will give possibilities for rolls for what they might know beyond, and so et cetera, et cetera. So the SPC is a much more fleshed out in that you can interact with it on an ongoing basis. And then the final are the RPCs. And again, the idea is that these are player characters that are developed for the adventuring group to engage with on an ongoing basis. This is perhaps their innkeeper at the inn from which they are renting a room. Maybe it's the lord that they have done different jobs for. Perhaps it's a vassal who reports back to them on the outcome of secondary tasks that have been assigned and so on. But the RPCs have to be the most fleshed out. These are the ones that are going to interact with week over week. You have to show some form of adaptation and advancement. You build them a list of feature skills, so therefore they can be interacted with in particular areas and like so. Between the RPCs, NPCs, and the NPCs, see how I did that? NPCs, RPCs, and SPCs, you're able to define the cadre of the characters in the world in a much more clear way so that the players can now interact with them coherently, and you've already done the work that you need to do so that you don't have to continue to generate new information and try to remember what you said last week. Not that I have a problem with that ever. No. Every week I'm Johnny on the spot. I know exactly where the stories are. Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to talk, ironically,